Hello, everyone. Uh, Jonathan here,
And Cole as well.
and we are in Scappoose at Oregon Tales HQ for this podcast. I'm going to be talking about dog handling, or you could say dog training, and from a multitude of different perspectives and angles. So, I guess first off, when it comes to training, and I remember years ago shifting how we categorized ourselves. And at this point, like, we don't consider ourselves dog trainers. And that kind of went by the wayside many years ago. We consider ourselves dog handlers. And one of the reasons for that was, I guess, the stereotype or the box that people put training, the word training in the sense that people are like, okay, I'm going to send my dog to this trainer and they're going to fix them. And then they're going to come back and then that's that. And I guess we just saw that so frequently. And so we kind of shifted away from being called trainers or categorizing ourselves as trainers, but instead saying, like, we're handlers. We're dog handlers.
We also don't consider that what we do for our work. Like, we're not going to take someone's dog and train them and send them home trained. So it also didn't really fit with our...
Yeah, because we didn't do board and trains. I mean, occasionally we would from time to time on special circumstances, but even in that, we were more like, we'll work with your dog for a month or two and see how far we can get it within that period of time, and that's that. So yeah, we weren't doing board and trains in that sense, where it's like your dog's going to come to us and learn A, B, and C. So anyways, so that's kind of how we segued away from using the term trainer and moved to dog handler, because it really, we're just handling dogs. I mean, that's the way I categorize it. We go pick dogs up in the city and we handle them all day, and we help them move through stuff, and then they go home. And so I guess I don't really consider us training. We just literally learn to handle dogs and handle their behaviors. So
We're also not training behaviors or qualities. Actually, more specifically, like asks of the dog. We're not training them to have obedience in certain ways. We're teaching them how to exist in the world and feel better in our care. And that feels like it doesn't quite resonate with the word training.
yeah, I mean, we do focus on recall and leave it. So there are some asks, but our main focus is just harmony in life.
Yeah.
That's the foundation of where we're coming from when we're going to work with a dog. It's not rooted in obedience. It's not rooted in recall. It's not rooted in leave it. It's just rooted in harmony.
Right.
And helping them move through life with more of that.
Right. And even in like the workshop situations, I'd say we're teaching the people how to handle and guide their dogs, how to support them.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's another facet, another great point, because many years ago, again, kind of around the same time, we shifted away from the word training. We just started putting more emphasis on giving people the skills, right?
Right.
So having this skill set ourselves, but then honing our ability to hand off those skills.
Right.
And really focusing on working with people who wanted to learn,
Right.
rather than working with people who are like, fix my dog.
Right. Train them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just focusing more on people who want to spend hours a day or an hour a day. I mean, hopefully just at least an hour a day. That is bare minimum. So
yeah, people that wanted to get to know their dog, work with them intimately.
yeah. And it's not like super prevalent, like it's not all pervading in the horse world, but when you go in the horse world, like people will on a weekly basis have lessons with a horse trainer. And I know that that exists in the dog world as well, but usually when we see that, it's like puppies. It's just puppies where they have like a 6-week training situation and then that's it. It's not this consistency. But in the horse world, I see a lot more consistency. Over like years, people will weekly go and work with a trainer and they'll just keep working. They'll keep refining. So I've definitely I've admired that about the horse world, and also at the same time being kind of perplexed why that's not necessarily the case in the dog world. I know that it is in some spheres for sure, but it's not as pervasive in the horse world.
In the dog world.
In the dog world, yes.
Yeah.
So touching on, before, like what did we do and how long did it take before I was like, I want to train with people now. I want to help people. And
like doing one-on-ones or
yes,
sessions with them, workshops.
Yeah.
Okay.
I started with Oregon Tails, I think in 2009. It was like April or May of 2009. And my sister owned the business at the time. And it was what it was. It was kind of a free for all. Definitely not nearly what it is today by a long shot. But as the years carried on, got more seasoned, the pack grew to the point to where we were, I don't know, there was maybe 25 or 30 dogs coming out on a regular basis. We were working 5 days a week. And I think it took me about 5 to 6 years, maybe 7, before I was confident enough in my ability to help other people. Kind of no matter what somebody inquired with, I was confident that I could help them. And that 5 to 7 years, and that was kind of a big window. I just really can't remember. But within that time frame, I was working with 25 or 30 dogs off leash and building, just learning. They were teaching me, and I was learning by trial and error, making lots of mistakes, but at the same time having an immense amount of success. Like you can go back on our Instagram and see that we had a very good handle on the dogs. Some of them were more challenging, but in any event, that's kind of how long it took me to really feel like, okay, I want to help other people. I want to try to give this knowledge to other people. I probably could have started a lot sooner, but I probably wouldn't have been as successful because I wasn't as successful with a multitude of different behaviors. So that's why I just kept on, to a degree, postponing it. And I'd give little tips here and there and whatnot, but nothing really formal. And another facet of that was Juno and my dog Juno. So I got him, and he was a handful, had many different behaviors. Like, he killed a couple cats, would eat things, open cabinets and eat things, break out of, when he was at his previous home, they had him in a kennel and they couldn't keep him in the kennel because he would either injure himself or break free. And he'd get in dogfights and scuffles and blah, blah. It's kind of the whole gambit. And so he was the other thing kind of pushing me, kind of helping me keep my blinders on in regards to helping other people. Because I was like, man, I have my hands full as it is. And so he inspired me to want to get better, build our relationship, because I just felt inside of me where I was like, if he's going to be the representation of my abilities, then I would like that to be to the fullest extent. And so that was another reason why I kind of pushed teaching and sharing the knowledge that I did have.
And when you started teaching, it was a long time ago, but I remember Juno at that time, and he was pretty far along overcoming his, what he came to you with.
Yeah.
Like, where was he at when you started teaching? Do you remember in his development?
I mean, I remember one dog specifically going over to this person's house, and they had this aggressive dog, and he was capable of being audibly guided while I handled this aggressive dog. And so I could give him cues to do ...
Okay.
off leash, while this dog was not being super friendly, on leash,
so
attached to me.
The reactivity was pretty gone.
Yes. Yeah. And at that point, like, he was over his cat stuff and all that. I think he still would eat like horse manure. That was like his cup of tea.
The last thing to go.
Ooh, he loved that. I remember a couple occasions being at the barn where I got Merlin, and I'd get busy working with Merlin or whatever, and then I'd turn around and see Juno, and he was just like a balloon. he had just gorged himself on horse poop. Yeah, that happened quite a few times, but
that was still a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. So he was pretty far along. He had transcended pretty much the majority of his stuff. So again, that's why I felt confident when I was like, okay, I have overcome all of these things. So now I feel pretty confident in, if somebody came to me, I would have a pretty clear path forward for them to conquer those same things. Even if the dog was pretty extreme, because Juno was pretty extreme. So everything below that was just kind of quite easier.
Right.
So yeah, it took me quite a bit of time to build up my desire to want to share, just based on that. I put that pressure on myself to grow my skills and my knowledge to such a degree with myself and the pack, as well as my personal dog. So, yeah. So what was your experience?
Um, I mean, mine was longer than yours.
Right.
I think I hit 15 years this year training, working with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in the day, it was training when it was obedience and treats with guide dogs.
And how many did you do?
Guide dogs?
Yeah.
4.
4
So I did
guide
that for
dogs.
5 years, which
Mhm.
was treats, clickers, obedience training.
And they were at a younger age.
Yeah, they started at 4 months and then we went to about a year and a half. It was kind of fluid when they would pull them to go into formal training, but you were raising puppies pretty much. And they
And it was
used
very regimented.
super
They
regimented.
had like a textbook that was like,
Yeah, it was like inches
massive.
thick.
Yeah.
Yeah, of all the things you couldn't do, couldn't play ball, couldn't have them on couches, no food from your hand, like very strict. Couldn't poop on walks.
although a
which is-
couple of years poop. Like I remember you told me a story about one of them pooped in the mall.
Oh yeah, he was like 5 months old. He was my first one. I was like 13.
Let's go shopping at the mall.
Well, you go everywhere. You go to movie theaters, you can go to like airports. Like you can go anywhere with these dogs, which was amazing because you could go
And you weren't lying about it.
like yeah, totally.
You weren't.
So I wasn't faking it. It
You
was
weren't
real.
faking it.
It was real. I think the only place we couldn't take them was to the zoo, just for health reasons. But we went into like planes to make sure they were okay with that. We went into movie theaters to make sure they were okay with the noise. And for that outing, we were in a mall and he pooped. I mean, he was still like, maybe he was 5 months old. We were on the way out and he pooped in the mall and he pooped out a marble. And it rolled down, those aisles in the mall. And I was a kid and I was mortified. Anyways,
Well, at least it was a marble.
right. And the pile,
Right.
But yeah, so I think I was about like 10 years into handling dogs when I started working with people.
Between guide dogs and Oregon Tails.
Because I hit 10 years with Oregon Tails this year, which is 2020, and then 5 years before that. And I think we've been teaching for maybe 5 years.
Yeah, just about 5 years.
Just about 5.
The workshops teaching, yes.
Yeah, which is where I started teaching. Like I didn't do one-on-ones before that. That was kind of my outlet in. And it wasn't really something that I was seeking out. I was very content with just what we were doing and supporting the workshops how I could. And it just organically came together with that, where I was just like chomping at the bit to get in there to help people that you were maybe helping someone else. And I would jump in with somebody else and it just organically happened. But within myself, I mean, my experience with the gentle method, any method before that, I didn't feel confident teaching at all to people. There were gaps in my understanding. There were maybe dogs that I couldn't work with. So I could work with a certain range of dogs through obedience or through like more correction-based handling. But then other dogs I would have more challenging situations with. And to me, I'm like, if I'm having a hard time with a certain kind of dog, I don't really have the right to be teaching someone if I'm not complete in my understanding. Like if I couldn't take that dog and help them get to a better place, then there's not really room for me to be teaching someone else how to get that dog there. And it wasn't really until the gentle method where I felt like I had more of a complete understanding of a method where it felt very unbounded in the dogs that I could work with and in the success in that. And like the method was second nature to me. I didn't have to think or question when I worked with a dog. Like, what's going on in the method here? Sorry, got a little message. Like, what's going on in the method here? Or what was that exercise again? Or am I doing this right? Or does this feel right? I mean, there's always going to be self-reflection in anything we do, but it was the movements and the feeling and the lead, it was second nature. It was just what happened on the other end of the lead. And that level of confidence was something that made me feel like I had something to share with others.
Because, I mean, you were skilled, like when you were hiking dogs in the pack, though, you had a level of skill that you could then have gone and helped people with.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely had a high level of skill before the gentle method.
What was, like, why didn't you feel inclined to go and teach up to that skill?
I guess because it was still limited. And I feel like when you teach something, if there are limitations in what you're teaching, there's not this complete, there are gaps in it. There's not a complete understanding of what you're doing if it's only working some of the time with certain dogs. Like there's something missing, which was, I felt that in my handling outside of, I wasn't training people, but even with the pack, I felt that where I was like, yeah, it's working with this dog, but I can't let go of the fact that it's not working with this other dog.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't let go of that. And so because of that feeling, I just didn't even cross my mind to share it with other people because I just wasn't there yet. But then when I did feel that, where I shifted from feeling limited to being like, hand me any dog and I'll be able to get there. And then to have that be so natural to me, like it becomes a part of you. Like I played violin for 13 years as a kid, and there was a point in my practice where the instrument felt like a part of you. And that's I feel like when you're getting somewhere to like a really sweet spot with something in your life, an instrument, a practice, or there's a deeper connection between you and it. And that's when I started teaching with dogs.
Yeah. I guess it's funny because I had kind of a different experience with it. As I mentioned, I had Juno. I wanted to get dialed. At that point, did you have Stitch?
Not
so.
when you started teaching. No, I didn't have Stitch.
You didn't.
No, I've had Stitch for 7 years, and I've been teaching for 5.
Got it.
4.
So then there was like 2 years there where you were building him out to get him to a good place.
Yeah. There's no way I would teach the gentle method if Stitch didn't know it completely.
Right.
Like you and I get so refined in it that Stitch had to be an example of what it could, the ultimate of what it could look like.
Right.
That's when I was like, I will teach, and it multiplied it too. Like you did it with a couple other foster dogs. I did it with Tate.
Right.
We did it with a pack where we were.
Yeah, lots
of time spent.
We were proofing it at that point. We were like, okay, we designed this thing, or we are designing this thing, and then we applied it to the pack, and then we just started observing. We're like, how does this change? And our days just started getting easier and easier and easier and more smooth, and the dogs were enjoying more. They looked better.
They felt better.
They felt better.
But inside of me with Stitch, it would have felt weird to teach someone the gentle method, step 1, let's say, if Stitch couldn't do it. Like, that's just kind of bizarre to me. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable teaching someone that and then not being able to show an example of it through Stitch of what it could look like.
Right. Yeah. I guess my experience also was different than yours in the sense that I had an immense amount of skill. Like, maybe Juno wasn't at that, like, up to par just yet, but I had a lot of skill. But then when I started teaching, I realized that what the process, and this is kind of what led me to move to the gentle method. One of the reasons was that having that skill and having, even a decent dog at the time, and being able to handle that many dogs was the transition to other people. So that knowledge being transitioned to other people. So like you maybe had a ceiling and you were like, okay, I feel confident in handling these kinds of dogs, right? And there were some that you're like, no, I can't handle them or whatnot. I didn't have that ceiling, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have that ceiling. But I still was perfecting my ability. One was, again, Juno. And then even when I started teaching from that skill level, I quickly realized that the transition to other people was pretty darn challenging. Like
teaching them how to do what you do.
Yes. Teaching them how to do what I do, the timing of it. And then not only that, but people because we used quite a bit more like alpha tactics. We were more physical and corrections and stuff like that. And I was dealing with people who were like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't like, yes, it gets results, but I don't like the way my dog looks. I don't like the way they act. Right. Or I don't like the way it makes me feel.
Right. Or I can't do it because my dog's giant and tiny.
Yeah, exactly. Or there's a disparity in weight or size or something like that. So that was definitely very interesting when I started teaching, where I was like, okay, like I'm now embarking on this new thing of teaching people, and I can do it, but the transition to other people was pretty evident.
I mean, even for me, like I was one of your students.
Right.
And I had a ceiling forever with that kind of training.
Yeah. And you tried quite hard.
I tried the hardest.
Quite hard. And there were some very challenging dogs that we had that, yeah. So that was very interesting. Once I got to that point where I was like, I'm going to start teaching, and then I quickly realized that this isn't really translatable. And then I remember, because it was all in me and it wasn't like this, it was more off the cusp.
Like an organic process.
Organic process. I remember having conversation with people being like, well, I don't know because I haven't seen your dog. And then I'd get there because I'd be like, I want to see what your dog gives me and this and that. Because it was very much an organic process. Like I was reacting to the dog, to the dog's reaction.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And that's kind of how I would move, and that's how I would train. And again, we were very successful. But now, It's like, I remember making the decision when it came to one-on-ones of like having everyone come to the ranch instead of going to their home and doing things in that more organic way. Because now we had this system, this process that we take every dog through. It doesn't matter what behavior it is. Of course, there's going to be little nuances that change how and whatnot, but we always start with step one and then we proceed on.
I feel like during that time, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were working with people in the home one-on-one in this more dominant alpha, whatever kind of way. And then I remember you taking time off from it when the gentle method was being created, and you didn't do any handling or teaching for like years, for a couple of years while we were perfecting and you were creating the method. Yeah. And then once it was established and we had success, then we brought that back in.
Yeah.
You brought that back in.
Yeah. And then it was like, instead of being like, I need to see your dog and this and that, it's like, just, okay, come to the ranch. I know exactly what we're going to be going over.
Right.
Because it's not reacting to the dog. It's asking something of the relationship and building the relationship within this simple structure of step one. Just walking in a circle and trying to accomplish that. It's like just trying to accomplish that. And that's the baby step. Rather than me walking through the door and the dog exploding and then having to walk the human through that level of intensity and like the subtleties behind all of that. It's like, now it's just put your dog on a leash and do these few things. Well, rather than going through like the psychology or I'm not going to get into all of it, but
we're prepping the person first and the dog instead of walk in the door and you have to learn a new way of communicating with the dog and you're in the middle of a trigger.
Yes.
You're removing that and you're like, I'm going to teach you how to communicate with each other. We're going to build that foundation. Exactly. And then we'll begin those situations, but you already know what to do.
Right. That's exactly it. And I still sometimes get like the vibe from people when they inquire about one-on-ones where they're like, I want you to fix my problems. And I feel like when I used to go into those trainings, that's kind of what it was, where it's like, we just go straight to the problem. And now we don't do that. Now it's, right. I mean, the problem may show up initially, but we ease our way into the problem. We don't just come and full Monty it,
Yeah. Even though we do get there pretty quickly.
Yeah. With some dogs, we get there pretty quick.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I remember the 2 dogs that we worked with like about a year ago.
Yeah. And
the humans came back because we were working with them. They came home from work and they were like, wow, you're already there.
Right. You're
already poking at the thing.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah. And they were kind of shocked that we were able to do what we were doing, having only been working with them for a few hours or a couple hours or something like that. So, but anyways, that was pretty interesting and kind of eye-opening. So instead of just showing up and going for the jugular or the behavior and then trying to convey all of the things that the person needs to go over, it's like we just set somebody up with just step 1, maybe step 2 and 3, and just be like, go practice this, learn to feel your dog and learn to work through the little battles that you may have there before attempting to address the battles when there's a new human or there's a cat or so on and so forth.
You're out in public.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to your point of, you said that some people will inquire and you get the feeling that they do want you to just fix problems. I think that we're pretty honest with people about that now and pretty upfront about how we don't really do that. We don't really come in and train your dog. It's a different kind of process.
Yeah, I mean, people will write on their application to do student of the dog, like, I'm looking for
Sit, stay, come.
Sit, a better sit, or better this or that behavior, and ask, and we're just like, okay, well, we're going to help you like connect with your dog in a different way so that those things will become easier. But it's not, we don't tackle those things specifically.
Right.
Right. It's just, we come at everything from a much more broad perspective. Subtle perspective. Because another example of this is, I remember there was a period of time when we were applying the gentle method, but we were still doing certain asks, like asking dogs to sit and like asking them different obedience, down and stay and whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember dogs that we had and then new dogs coming in, we were practicing the gentle method with them. This was so cool to observe. Practicing the gentle method with them and then asking them to do those things, and it was like so soft and instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me realize, like, we were quieting, like, all of their obedience was there that they had practiced. Maybe it was a puppy, or who knows when they practiced it, but it was there.
Yeah.
But they were just so scattered. And so that during that period of time, I just realized, like, wow, we're like quieting the dog's physiology. And then there's all of the obedience.
Right.
It's right there.
All the skills are
there.
There.
It's all there.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to uncover it.
And if it's not there, it's
super easy to teach.
Pretty easy to teach.
Very easy.
Like, there are some more challenging cases where you really have to do quite a bit of work, but then a lot of them it's right there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's very easy teaching dogs with quiet minds that we've helped get there new things.
Totally.
So anywho, so that's kind of how long I waited before I decided to teach. And then that's how long Cole waited. So I think part of the reason why we wanted to share that is because there's definitely an observation that we've made over the years teaching, in the sense that people will come to our workshop, or they'll go to other people's workshops. Maybe they'll go to one, maybe they'll go to two, and then they'll go and teach it, which, to each their own. But for us, that just is so foreign.
Mm-hmm.
And to have people come to Student of the Dog, learn, and then go home and start trying to teach that to people without having spent months or years practicing it.
With many different dogs.
With many different dogs, many different behavior types, breeds. It's just interesting. The other thing is that I follow Buck for years.
Buck Brannaman.
6-7 years, followed him, just observing natural horsemanship. And then when I got Merlin, practicing natural horsemanship before I applied it to the gentle method. And I'm more of a dog guy. There's no way I would go and teach horsemanship at this point. I probably could. I could probably help quite a few people, but I'm still not quite there to the degree that I would want to be at to then go and teach. So again, for us, it's just very interesting to observe other people and what kind of they're inclined to do after a workshop. You know, maybe they get a certificate. We don't give certificates out. Like we haven't quote unquote endorsed anyone in the Gentle Method to be teaching it. But there's plenty of people who are doing that. And a lot of them are having success. Like we get many DMs and many emails. And if you have my phone number, I get texts about the success that people have with it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's cool to hear.
Which is fantastic. But again, it's just interesting.
Yeah, it's a different way of going about it. And in my mind, I go to one that we're weird. Like
Yeah, maybe we wait.
Maybe we're just the odd man out, you know, odd person out. I think a part of it might be, I don't know, like, do you think that in order to teach, there needs to be a level of mastery within yourself?
I mean, personally, yes.
Okay. Because I feel a little bit of that in myself.
Personally, yes. Absolutely.
And I think that that's the case with, like, mine, and I believe that they're your mentors outside of, well, just in general in life. I have 3 mentors, you, Buck Brannaman, and then Maharshi. And when I look at the 3 of you, you're all masters of your craft. And that's what resonates with me as someone that I would look up to learn from, as someone who has a deep, deep understanding of their craft and what they're teaching in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the people that are my like role models, they're masters in their craft. So I guess then, yeah, like Maharshi.
It's the same, right?
Yeah, Maharshi, and then a high school teacher of mine who's just unbelievable. And Buck, and reading the books of his mentors.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they were masters,
right?
And that's kind of all that I've got as far as role models and stuff. But you're right; they were all masters, and not kind of limited by anything.
Right.
It's like if they're in their field. Yeah. There weren't any gaps. So So I guess maybe that's maybe a difference.
Yeah, but it is interesting because there is a lot of success with someone who just gets nuggets of our teaching. You can walk away with incredible success in the dog that you brought, and then in dogs that you potentially work with. And so it's an interesting line between kind of holding out until there's that deeper understanding, or taking what you have and doing what you can.
Right. And that's the whole point. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because it's, number one, we don't gossip. Number two, we don't just talk about people amongst ourselves. But it's just interesting to observe this thing, because when we started teaching, I was like, this is going to happen. Like, I knew that people were going to come take the workshop, take what they wanted, and then come up with some kind of Frankenstein recipe of the Gentle Method as well as like other techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have any control over that, really.
Right.
So
And like, who's to say what is right and wrong?
yeah,
It's just like what feels good to
yeah,
us.
and I knew that was going to happen, but that wasn't a deterrent
Right.
to sharing. So yeah. So I guess when it comes to sharing and, things that we have thought about over the years, observed, when it comes to like civilians, just everyday lay people
Mm-hmm.
looking to find a dog trainer or dog handler, what to look for.
Well, there's so many people. There's so many different methods, so many different ways of doing it within the methods, so many different trainers. Like, I would feel so overwhelmed if I was just a person with a dog who needed help.
Yeah, this day and age.
Yeah, there's
Like, I remember my mom, when we had dogs growing up, she would look in the telephone book
for a trainer.
for trainers.
Nice.
And so there was just not very many at all. And now it's like everywhere.
Well, and it's black and white too, parts of it. You know, someone's going to say this is good, and then the next person's going to say that's not good.
Yeah.
And so navigating that,
And it's all in your face. Yeah, it's super challenging. So
I think a big part of navigating that would be feeling yourself. What feels good to you? Like, we always say that at workshops. Like, if this doesn't feel good to you, don't do it. Go find something else. You have to practice what feels good to you.
yeah, because if it's not feeling good to you, it's not going to feel good to the dog.
Yeah.
Period. So that's a crucial element for us. It's what's felt good. And you were another facet to the gentle method coming into existence. Just because you didn't feel super awesome handling dogs the way that we handled them, because there were those limits that you had on yourself. So yeah, definitely finding something, whatever the method may be. Like, we're not dog handlers, or if you want to call us dog trainers, that are going to sit here and be like, that method's not cool, that method's the best, this method's not cool, that method's not cool, you have to do it this way. Whatever floats your boat. That's life. We're not going to sit here and say that what we do is the best way. I mean, we do feel like it is, or else we would be doing something else. I wouldn't practice the gentle method if I thought that there was something better, because I would just go and master that.
Right. And if the gentle method didn't exist, I wouldn't be working with dogs, because nothing else feels good to me.
Right.
Nothing else does. But that's for you and me.
Well, I think that we are also, just our journey in the dog world is quite different than a lot of people's, in the sense that we had 25 or upwards of 55 plus dogs off leash. And so those methods in this setting, it's not going to fly.
Yeah.
Like, moving through life with that many dogs is just...
that aren't ours.
That are not ours. And you think about, it's funny because the way you think about it, like, it's like 50 times of what the normal person would want in their life. Because each dog, we'd pick them up, we're a stranger. People want their dogs to be comfortable with strangers. They want their dogs to be comfortable traveling in a vehicle. They want their dogs to be comfortable with other dogs. They want their dogs to listen. They want their dogs to be off leash. They want their dogs to be cool with seeing prey animals and leaving them. They want their dogs to be comfortable being bathed. Like, our whole day is a normal is what everyone wants, but just times 55, or now it's 25 because our
Right.
pack's much smaller.
Right.
And so our setup was so different than most people in that sense. So like using food, we tried that for a brief moment, and I was like, nope, this is not gonna
No.
fly. Because we'd have dogs with resource guarding, we'd have dogs that were just nuts about food
Yeah.
in like a jolly way. And so once we had the food, that was all of their existence. They wouldn't go play, they wouldn't go and smell, they wouldn't be a dog. They cared about us, but I'm like, that's not what your humans are paying me for, you know?
Right.
They're paying us for you to come out here and enjoy life and socialize, not be fixated on me because I have food.
Right.
Or we tried toys, and it was the same thing. We'd have resource guarders, or we'd have dogs that were just like so fixated on the toy, they would just forget that they were even on a ranch in a beautiful place and they had access to playing and smelling and swimming and stuff. And it was like, that's not really going to fly either.
Or dogs that just didn't care about either.
Or
And then
dogs
what?
that, and then what? Because we're so in that sense, it was quite different when it came to the methodologies, you know. And so none of those things felt good to us because they didn't succeed in a large scope, as large of a scope that we had,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's an unusual situation that we have.
Yeah. But, you know, coming back to these different methodologies, a lot of people, I mean, just take obedience, for example. They want their dog to be obsessed with them.
Mm-hmm.
They want that. We don't want that because we want to go for a walk and not have our dog obsessing over us, but rather going to greet other dogs,
Mm-hmm.
going to be a dog, right?
Right.
And so that felt good to us, to like move through obedience, move through food, move through kind of those things to eventually what we created was the gentle method, because
Right.
that is, nothing felt good to us. Nothing worked on that large of a scale and scope. And so here we are today.
Right.
But for the everyday person, I think that it's valuable for folks to do research and go interview a trainer and look at what they're capable of, look at their personal dogs, and look at the tools they use, look at maybe just their personality, their own kind of their energy. And if all of those things line up, then give it a try. And then maybe you'll try it and you're like, well, I don't really want to use e-collars, or I don't really want to use a prong collar. And then you'll do research, because it's super easy to do nowadays, because everything is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll stumble across somebody else, a trainer who does all of those things, but they don't use prong collars, or enter any whatever recipe it is that you want in that.
Right. You kind of look at what they've created.
Yes, look at what they've created. I remember seeing Buck for the first time and just being blown away at the harmony that he had with the horses that he was riding. Like, it was like love at first sight.
Yeah. Well,
it rocked me in that way. just like when I saw you for the first time.
Oh, nice one.
Which is the reality of the situation.
But you look at something like that, like for me, when I look at Buck, without even asking him, because I've never talked to him except for like, hello, good afternoon. And I was like, oh my God. I look at him with his animals and I'm like, there's nothing he can't do.
Yeah.
He has no limitations. And it is a lot of work, but there's an effortlessness to that work.
Yes.
Like it's that mastery again.
Right.
And then looking at him and seeing and thinking, you could do anything with that horse.
Yeah. And that's kind of the exact feeling that I had as well. And then like just looking at the horse's demeanor.
Yeah.
It was just placid. No matter what he asked this horse to do, even challenging things, it just stayed neutral the whole time. And I just remember seeing that and I was like, that is what I want. That is what I want to create for myself. And that's what I want to create with my relationship with Juno and the dogs that we handle. And then give that to other people if they want it.
It's neutral, but it's also lively.
Yes.
Like he will talk about that a lot where he's like, we don't want a dull horse.
Yes.
Like there's neutrality, but there's so much life behind it.
Yes.
And so much connection between the two.
Yeah, neutrality.
But I know some people think neutrality and they think like
dullness, and that's definitely
and
not.
There's
what
so
we're
much
about.
like vitality behind it, and
Right.
I see it. Like to me, I see it in you too with Juno, and you're being like I see it more and more with Merlin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember seeing him and just being like, "Yep, this is I'm good. Like I found what I wanted." And I haven't looked at any other kind of horsemanship. I mean, maybe occasionally things will pop up here and there, like on Instagram, or maybe somebody told me about this horse person and I would go and check it out. But I would always juxtapose that over buck or natural horsemanship. And I would I'd be like, no, it's not for me. Because I didn't see the level of completeness in it. So
Right.
So anyways, so for the everyday person, I mean, it's just going out and finding something, and maybe you just want a good sit, stay, a good dog that just listens to you.
Yeah, walks well on leash.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And you could find quite a few trainers who get that, and they're just going to go about that in different ways.
Totally.
And so then it's just like, do you want to have to carry a food around with you, or do you want to have to buy a couple extra tools, maybe an e-collar and a prong collar, or maybe if you're a balanced trainer, that's what I guess they call them, which I didn't even know what I heard balanced trainer. And I was like, what is that? Because isn't balance subjective?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And then I was like, I've come to realize that it's actually a term because they use positive reinforcement or reinforcers with like food and then corrections. So that's why they come up with the balance. So you could find a trainer that uses e-collars and prong collars, but they also use food as a reinforcer. So it's all out there.
Yeah, you can do it.
It's all out there. And to each their own, Like we don't want to work with you if it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
You should go carry on your way and find somebody else that suits you and suits your dog.
Yeah.
So
I think so too.
It's very important for us.
And asking people questions too. Asking, maybe what they've overcome with their personal dogs. Are there limitations with their personal dogs? Are their dogs even there? And then why not? Like, I think that it can be challenging to ask someone that you're going to for help questions.
Yeah, it definitely should be an interview.
Yeah, where you're both communicating with each other and asking questions and getting to know each other mutually to see if it's a good fit for your dog and yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at the dogs too. Cuz like if you don't mind your dog whining and barking, or let's just enter those behaviors in, and like that's what you go and you see the dog trainer and their dog whines and barks, but yet it can do what you want, which is walk on a loose leash, then you're good.
Right.
Because you'll probably succeed in getting your dog to walk on a loose leash, and you're still going to have a dog that barks and whines, or you're still going to need to use a crate, or you're still going to need to use corrections. And so, but I think another really important part is to interview the dog too, or if they have many dogs, is interview quote unquote the dog trainer's dogs as well. Because they're the ones who aren't going to lie. They can't. Those dogs can't lie. They're gonna show you who they are and what they're capable of or not capable of. So that's also very important. Almost maybe more so than the actual trainer themselves to a degree. Interviewing a trainer and then interviewing quote unquote their dogs is important, because you'll also get to see, like, are they a master in what it is that they do?
Yeah, that's true.
And that will obviously help you make your decision in whether you continue your search, or maybe you take some knowledge from one trainer and then you kind of go to another trainer and you take some knowledge from them, and so on and so forth, and you kind of like take that approach, which is fine. I guess again, coming back to like our personal experience, like talking about when I saw Buck and I was just sold on natural horsemanship. I didn't care how long it was going to take me. I just knew that I was going to put in the time and I was going to be dedicated to it because I saw where it could get me. And since then, I haven't looked at other horsemanship techniques and whatnot. And then when it comes to dog handling, it's kind of the same. Like, my knowledge grows, definitely. I feel myself expand the longer I practice the gentle method, the more I work with a multitude of dogs. That's where my knowledge grows.
Which is so cool, because you created the gentle method. So you could be done. You could just be like, oh, I'm done growing. I'm done learning. Like,
right.
You know,
I guess so.
I'm at the peak, but there's, and I feel the same way. There's always little bits of learning.
Yeah.
It becomes a lot smaller and way more refined.
Right.
And quiet. But
I mean, just the more you practice something, the better you're going to get at it, period.
Yeah, at anything. Yeah, totally.
So,
and even if you're practicing a different method of handling, it's still going to take that time to get to a more developed level of understanding. Like, anything is going to take time to really, truly understand what it is you're doing.
mm-hmm.
And so you can take a little bit away from something, from any method, but there's a lot of other things that might be left behind that you're not, or a person might not be taking with them, which is fine.
Right. Yeah, I think it just comes back to like mastery. Like, I look at so many different types of training, and I didn't delve into a lot of them, but when I look at, I know there's limitations to them, or else I'd probably be doing them. And of course, that's a point to be argued. I'm sure somebody listening to this is gonna maybe not take fond views of that comment, but when it comes to, let's just say, positive only, somebody had to come up with that method and have so much success with it. This is what I'm hypothetically speaking, thinking, to where they're like, I'm going to now teach this to people. This is how it goes in my head, right? Mm-hmm. And so people who go and learn it and don't necessarily give it a try, who are attracted to it, and they're like, and then they fall away from it.
Like they begin on the path.
They begin on the path and then they just fall off the path. Mm-hmm. I'm like, is that because, what does that do to? Like, is it due to them realizing the gaps in the methodology, or is it due to a lack of grit to stick it out? Because I can't help but think, like, if somebody is going to put something out into the world, they've back tested it enough to know that it works with every dog.
Right.
That it works, period. Right? Or if it doesn't work with every dog, then to have a disclaimer on it, right?
Right.
But I just go in my head, I'm just like, if and this is just me projecting, because I wouldn't put the gentle method out there if I didn't have the confidence that it would work with every dog.
Right. With any person, with any dog.
Any person with any dog. Obviously, if you're handicapped, it might be a little challenging.
Yeah, totally.
So there's some outlying situations there.
Yeah,
but
always.
Or if your dog's handicapped, there's some outlying, some outliers there. But for the most part, yes. And so I just look at other methodologies and I put the same lens on it, right? Mm-hmm. And so again, when I see people come into a student of the dog, or they go to this workshop and they learn, then they go to another one, like maybe a month later or the next year, and then they go to another one the next year, and they just kind of like shop around dog training. I'm like, you're seeking still. You're still searching.
Right.
For something that works. And is it like, does it work? Are you searching for something that works for you?
Like what's a good fit for them?
Yeah, like what's a good fit for them? Or are they searching for a good fit for their dog? Or is it both? Mm-hmm. Because I know plenty of dog trainers who still search for different things, and I don't have that. Mm-hmm. And that may sound very arrogant, but again, I look at natural horsemanship. When I saw Buck, I was like, that is the pinnacle to me. I'm so fortunate and thankful that I did find natural horsemanship right from the get-go, because to me, it's the be-all, end-all when it comes to that complete harmony with your horse, but also it being functional in life. Not just working cows or roping or whatnot, but just functional in life, and how you overcome behaviors and fears, Yeah. So that was the be-all, end-all. And so for us, like I said, like I wouldn't be doing the gentle method if I knew there was something better.
Right.
And again, this isn't to sound arrogant, but when I think about or observe other trainers going to other techniques, maybe they've had this troubled dog that they're fostering, or they adopted, or they've had for years, and they keep bouncing around from trainer to trainer. I'm like, why don't you just stick it out? just stick it out. Like if you go to like a dog trainer who does obedience, just stick it out. And
Like,
you know what I mean?
I think sticking it out for you and me is longer in time.
Yeah, when like I'm talking like years.
Yeah.
Like perfect it.
Yeah. If it
And
feels
then-
good to you.
Yeah, of
if
course.
it feels good.
Right. But stick it out, perfect it, and then be like, and then see that it doesn't work. Or is it like their subconscious that's like pushing them to continue moving through because it's not working? But it's kind of fascinating, again, coming back to this whole thing of we would never go and take a workshop and then turn around and teach it.
Right.
And I'm also in that place, in a similar sense of I wouldn't practice something and then stop it unless it didn't feel good, which we did. Like
Yeah, we
our
did.
process was like food, quickly ran through positive reinforcement and using food, obedience, and kind of like alpha-ish thinking that lasted the longest. But eventually we hit a point where like, well, this doesn't work to the entirety that we wanted to. So then that went by the wayside. And now here we are with the gentle method.
Right. We had
So,
to
like,
create something.
So is that their process? You know?
Maybe. I think that there are going to be people out there that are just looking for that thing. You
like
know,
the
that
silver like the silver bullet.
maybe what feels best to them. Maybe just on the feeling level of trying different methods, and nothing feels truly harmonious. And so there's that movement from method to method, because we did do some of that. You're very right in that.
Yeah, I think about that from time to time. Because there's people that, I mean, we work with who take the workshop and then they go off and learn other things. And I'm just like, I wonder why.
Well,
It's just their journey, of course, but I'm like, I always think to myself, I'm like, what else can we do from our side to be like, to help them realize like this is, it will work. Like
Yeah.
you give yourself to it, it will work, period.
if it feels good to you.
Of course.
Because if
feels
it
good to you.
doesn't, then it's not gonna work.
Right. And I guess I think about it, I'm like, is that what other dog trainers feel? Like, is that what they feel with their technique that they teach, you know?
Is what?
Is that the feeling that they have when they're teaching workshops? Is it, if you commit to this, it will work?
Right.
Like whether it's play or whether it's obedience, do they have that same level of conviction? I don't know.
I don't either. It's interesting too, because what people learn from us, they're learning a drop in the ocean in 9
Yes.
hours. You learn anything for 9 hours and you're just getting started.
And that's another great point where you're literally judging something on 9 hours. Or maybe if you go to other workshops, I don't know how long they work with dogs, but it might be even shorter.
Right.
Like I know some people work with dogs for like 20 or 30-minute increments or something like that. And then if you go to that workshop and then you go and then start teaching, it's like, wow, that's not very much time. That's a quick turnaround
Yeah.
to have confidence to go and teach.
Yeah. I mean, going back to playing an instrument growing up, or if you do anything, if you go into law, if you go into physical therapy or anything like that, you do it for 9 hours and you quickly realize how terrible you are at it.
Right.
And how much, like, it's like the more you know, the more you don't know. Like the
Right.
more you see that there is so much more going on in what you're learning.
Right. And I still have that, thankfully.
Yeah. And I think a part of what, some people learn different methods because it is a form of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to continue to learn throughout your life and grow in that way. I think it might just be different for some people. Like you and I grow within like the gentle method. And so it's one method and really diving into that one thing. For other people, learning looks like many different things.
Right.
Which is just a different form. But sticking to one method doesn't mean you're done learning.
Right. Yeah.
Like it doesn't stop. It's not like if you commit to one thing, you're done learning and that part of you is just shut off. Like it stays going. It's just different. It's just more refined.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely interesting things, observances that we've made over the years, for sure, since embarking on teaching, spending, that there's that Malcolm Gladwell book about 10,000 hours, and putting that in, then you're kind of a master. I mean, I think it should be longer than 10,000 hours. Personally, I think it should be more like 20,000. But in any event, yeah, I guess it's just interesting seeing people not putting in that 10,000 hours and going and teaching, or not putting in that 10,000 hours and then moving on to another methodology, not really seeing it through and sinking your teeth into it and finding some ownership of it or understanding of it before moving on. So, but I do think about that when it comes to other trainers, whether they emphasize more play or food or obedience or alpha this, if they have that same level of conviction in their methods and teaching it. So, because we still kind of are under our rock.
Yeah. I like our rock.
The rock's nice. Yeah. Yeah. That was a good little deep dive into some observations that we've had and some questions that we've had, and then just some advice for folks as they embark on finding a dog handler, or if you want to call them dog trainers, dog trainer. And thank you for being here with us for this podcast. We hope it was insightful and enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you.